So now, I think we've really covered a lot of ground here in a short space of time, and I do want to thank everyone who's come. I'll do that formally at the end, but we do have some time for some questions from the audience. If anyone would like to talk to any of us, ask us questions, either, maybe Derrick can speak to what it was like to be at the G20. I'm happy to entertain questions about being a journalist in other police states. And I'm sure Don could speak to what Amnesty is doing here and around the world. So do I see any hands going up? Who would like to ask the first question?
Well,
yes,
I was just wondering if anybody has ever thought of the idea of having humanitarian organizations be a part of the police training, so they would learn about democracy.
Why don't you come up here and, or I don't know if I can do the wandering mic thing, because we don't have that much cord, but I think everyone should hear your question. How much cord do we have? Maybe I can do the wandering mic thing. Okay, as long as it doesn't feedback. Okay, sorry, what was your name and your question?
My name is Al Morswell, and I was just wondering if anybody has thought of the idea of humanitarian groups or university humanitarian people getting involved in training of the police so that they would be, well versed in what a democracy is and what civil liberties are, so that if they, got involved in anything that was going to be contrary to these ideas, they would maybe think twice about doing it.
So even as we're training Afghan and other police in other countries, we need training for our own police. What do you think, Derrick?
We need some of that training for Stephen Harper, and and that's really the problem. Even if you have, sensitive police officers or people who respect the rule of law or whatever, are prone to it was definitely the chain of command. That's why we need a public inquiry. It's not so much to find out which individual officer was brutal here or there. We have to find out who was giving orders, what they were, because you could tell that they had been giving, especially on the Sunday, someone had given them marching orders to round up hundreds of people and to arbitrarily detain. So we need to find out where the orders were coming from, and I think Hadani made it as a reference in passing, but it's funny if you think about it, but it's also very dangerous. The fact that the RCMP, one of the big things that they do is train police in places like Haiti. The RCMP has been involved the whole time the U.S. has been at war in Iraq. The RCMP has been training the pro-U.S. police forces in Iraq, and this should concern us, especially when we see, what we saw in Toronto. So I don't know, I think it's more important to change the overall politics, and maybe you would get a different kind of policing if you change the larger politics. I don't know. In most countries, the job of the police really is to enforce the rule of the elites, and usually they just do it in a little more civil way, and they sort of showed their true face, in my opinion, in Toronto, of who they were protecting, because they had this whole, remember what they were doing all this, and they had the fence and all these riot police. The main thing was just to keep the leaders from seeing any of us. They were doing all this to protect 20 leaders and their entourage so they could have some photo ops inside. And, they should have been, in a just country, they would have been arresting a lot of those leaders. People who committed war crimes. The king of Saudi Arabia was there. You want a human rights abuser, you got him inside the G20 and many others. So, yeah, that's a long way of answering your question, but anyway, Don might know more about how police are trained. And
when I think of the School of the Americas, that seemed to work. Why couldn't we do it the other way around?
The other way, yeah, right.
This is by and large the RCMP, you're saying? It's a police force, private police force in Toronto.
You can answer which police force.
The question was, is it by and large the RCMP that is doing this training of foreign police forces, as Derrick pointed out, pro-American police forces in Iraq and in Haiti also, the police are being trained by the RCMP. Is there any other provincial or other police body, I guess? Is that your question, besides the RCMP?
The police were arresting you guys at the RCMP?
No, that was, sorry. It was a joint police force, but the majority was OPP, Toronto Police Services, but there was also RCMP. There was a joint command. And it was also a military office, so it was joint forces.
So, Don, you want to talk about that?
So just on the question of training, when Amnesty issues reports where we have, with our challenges around the policing, brutality and so on, we do make a lot of very specific recommendations as to what that training should include. but we don't act as consultants ourselves. So we don't provide the training, but we certainly are very clear on what that training should include. And obviously, it would include a lot of human rights issue information and understanding.
Thank you, Don. So I just want to remind everyone again that I sound like preaching to the converted, I guess, but having just been in Iraq, Iraq is a country where every government minister has their own private militia. So I just think there's a slippery slope and we need to be vigilant. Any other questions from the audience? You, sir.
Is there any substance to the accusations of dirty tricks on the part of the police? There's an incident where a police car was burned and so-called protesters were trampling on it, and no police came and interrupted that act of vandalism. And there's some argument that they were actually wearing police-issued shoes or boots, the same sort of thing that happened in the Quebec summit. Is that simply an urban myth, or is there some reason for believing that maybe they would have done something like that to justify the $1 billion in security expenses?
So was it an inside job, Derrick? What do you think?
Well, I think the things we can say for certain is that the police did infiltrate. Two things we can say for certain, which are of great concern. I think another reason we need a public inquiry is that the police did infiltrate activist groups in the lead up to the G20. They infiltrated groups throughout Ontario for over a year. That's into court records now, because some of the work the infiltrators did is being used in the cases against these activists. And we also know that they refused to rule out using agent provocateur to provoke violence. And as you mentioned, in 2007 at the Montebello SPP meetings, the summit in Montebello, there were 3 undercover Quebec police officers who were found carrying rocks and trying to incite violence so that the police could arrest a bunch of people and beat people up. That said, there's different eyewitness reports of some of those incidents. Some people say that the police cars were sort of abandoned and riot police just went down the alleys or sort of scattered while a lot of this stuff was happening and cars were being set on fire. One thing is that the cars were left burning for hours and hours. Like they couldn't get a fire truck there or something. When they had a water cannon, by the way. They had ordered a water cannon to use against protesters as a weapon, but the water cannon was missing when the police car was burning for hours, and of course it made great television to have that police car smoking for hours and hours. But we can't say for certain, and we really need a public inquiry, and we need to be able to say we need to have police forces that have to rule out using agent provocateur, especially when they've just been caught doing it recently. And it's the same thing here at the Olympics. Even the Vancouver police at the Olympics, they refused to say they wouldn't infiltrate the crowd and provoke violence. So this is very serious stuff when it keeps happening time and time again.
Can you still hear us at the back?
I will just speak up.
I wish someone would arrest those troublemakers making all that noise. Where's the RCMP when you need them? We're trying to have a serious discussion here. Do you have anything to add to that? Okay. Any other questions? Oh, the photographer, yes. Can you come forward a little bit? I don't know if we can. So, what's your name and what would you like to comment on or question one of the panelists about?
I'm Andrew, and I was at the Free Speech Zone at Queen's Park, and just throughout the whole protest, they were actually tear gassing the Free Speech Zone and just constantly pushing us back and just intimidating people within the Free Speech Zone. Also, I was searched just walking home from the events, maybe twice. I was walking the opposite direction too. Just randomly searched if you're wearing black or if you have a bag. It was just kind of ridiculous.
So it was quite a frightening experience for you and precedent setting in other protests that you covered?
Well, this is my first protest to cover.
Okay.
But yeah, it was intimidating, and people were just kind of trucked away on Sunday. So it was kind of really disturbing.
Are there any other questions for any of our panelists or comments or anyone else? Oh yes, you in the fabulous tiara. Come forward so we can hear your question. We'd like you to come to speak into the mic so everyone can hear your question.
Yeah. Well, I was protesting, and my name is Ilona, and I protesting, and I was in a thing there, dancing there on a night gallery, and the police come there, and the police driving around and see what's going on there. Because people are getting really nasty there, in the street there, was dancing, and the police doesn't do nothing because, they have trouble with downtown east side. The woman walking there, the police throw her down on the ground, and pushing her around, stuff like that.
Thank you. Any other questions for the panelists or comments? Perhaps someone has a question for Don about Amnesty International's advocacy work in terms of right to assembly, or no? Okay. Well, yes. I want to reiterate that if you'd like to subscribe to New Internationalist or Canadian Dimension, you can talk to Trevor here about that. You can also buy my book, Dancing in the No-Fly Zone. I'm going to be signing copies if you're interested, and if you'd like to, if you'd like to buy Derrick's book, you can talk to him. And this is quite a show-stopping finish. Wow. So, and I would just like to thank again our panelists for their time today. Don Wright of the local Amnesty office, thank you very much. Big round of applause for Don. And also for our panelist Derrick O'Keefe. Thank you, Derrick. I have to say a special note of thanks to Colin Miles, who helped me pick up the PA system and drop it off. Thank you, Colin. And thanks to everyone for coming out today. I'm encouraged by your presence, and I think that we do really need to continue the fight for our right to assembly and protest free from violence and arbitrary arrest. So thank you very much.